17 years of experience leading global teams. Today, he's here to educate us on the mindset that creates burnout and kills innovation. Please welcome Dave Chohan. Dave, g'day. How you doing?
G'day, mate. I'm very well, thanks. Good to be here.
Nice to be here. Now, we were just talking a moment ago. I'm an expat. Are you an expat? Uh, how did you get your Aussie accent?
Yes, I am. Well, I was born in Libya to parents from Punjab. At the time, they were working for embassy and the Secretary of Health. And Then I was moved back to India to be with my grandmother. She raised me, and from that point, when I gained my independence, I started traveling. I worked a few years in India before moving to all sorts of countries for work and study. Uh, as you do, you growing up, you never appreciate the value of family, and I was running away from my family. Most of my family, they're up in Canada, so the only way I could go furthest from them was finding a place that's still like the place I would like to call home, but was really far away. So it was Australia. So I ended up finding my home here.
Wow. Did you say Libya?
Yes.
Wow. How
Yes, I was
how
born
did
in
they get
North
to Libya?
Africa.
Because that's a it's a place in the world that most people probably wouldn't put on their travel destination list.
Well, I'm glad I don't have a passport or nationality. I'm glad they were wise enough to to not gift me that. I think world was different before 1990 when the first Gulf War happened,
Mm,
and they ended up finding themselves there. Um, uh, Rest of my family, they're third generation Canadians, so we knew that the world is international, and it's a world full of global citizens, and family decided to move out of the country long time ago, and yeah, that was the choice they made.
mm. And and the culture in that region of the world is so different. When I moved to Dubai in 2007, I was exposed to the MENA region, which was Middle East, North Africa. And
Yeah.
the company that I was working with was trading with the North African regions. And when I met people and we were trading vehicles from Chrysler, Jeep, and Dodge. The way that the trading was done was so casual. It was so casual. Where in Australia it tends to be so formal, but in the Middle East, they would come in, would sit down, would have a coffee. If they were Muslim men and they had to pray, they'd leave the meeting, they'd pray, and then they'd say, Inshallah, I'll come back. And they might not come back for a day or a week or a month, but they'd come back eventually. And then, and then they'd place their order and away they went. But it was such a different culture. And being an Australian going into that part of the world, there was so much to learn because Dubai was a very cosmopolitan city with, there was 100 plus nationalities there trading. And you'd look around and you'd think everybody's so well behaved. And the one thing that they had in common was work. People went to work, and that's what you did. And once you had done your job, you left. You took your
Yeah,
money and you left.
absolutely, Daniel. I love how you put it. One word could mean different things in different cultures.
Mm,
Your yes could mean, yes, I'll do it. Yes, I will think about it. Yes, I know what you're saying, but I don't agree, but I can't say it out in public, could mean three different things just by mere one word, yes.
mm,
And I think you're right. We learn about this stuff when we open ourselves to different cultures.
mm,
Growing up in different cultures, I know I've learned these things, these cultural nuances. And one thing that I've appreciated most is culture is very fluidic thing. What's
mm,
relevant right now could become redundant in 6, 10 years, 20 years time,
mm,
depending how leadership of that nation, of that community, of that culture leads itself to. We
mm,
know that 1980s and 1990s were very affluent and very advanced when we talk about Middle Eastern cultures, but now things have shifted. They've actually shifted into backward territory when we talk about it, and essentially it's driven by leadership. And things we take for granted, the freedom, the choices, the liberty we have today. The difference between having it and not having it very thin. And we often appreciate it more when we don't have it. So
mm.
living in different cultures, that's the one big thing that I've learned, that freedom comes with responsibility. You
mm,
can't have one or other. You got to have both, and quite often responsibility comes before freedom. You should be
mm,
responsible enough to enjoy and gain your freedom so you can keep it for tomorrow as well.
mm. The environment that I worked in the second company was different, and I guess I got to pre-frame it saying that there's no right or wrong. There's only different. And coming from Australia, we lead in one particular way, and when I was in the Middle East, they led in another way. So for me, when I started to work with this Arabic company, I would be doing the trading. So I'm working, and then there was other people in the business, but they were kind of segregated by the type of passport that you had. So I had a blue passport, I had the Australian passport, and I was treated one particular way. And then there was other people, and depending on their passport and its color, they were treated in another way.
Yeah.
But with my Aussie mentality, I came across thinking that I'm just going to treat everybody as an equal. And so that was my approach. So I started to work and I would say hello to the cleaners. I'd say hello to the mechanics. I'd say hello to the front desk staff. And I'd talk to every single person because that's what I was accustomed to. And after a couple of days of being in the business, the people who were cleaning the showroom floors were delivering coffees to my office. And I got pulled aside. And the leader said to me, he said, Daniel, you can't have these people coming to the office delivering you coffees. And I said, how do you mean? He said, well, they don't work for you. They work for the company. I said, I've never asked them for a coffee. I said, I've never asked them to do that for me. I said, they've just wanted to do it. And so he said, well, you can't do that around here. And I was really blown away by that because I looked at him and I thought, our culture should be fairly similar. You're British, I'm Aussie. We should be treating everybody the same. But in his mind and how he had been groomed to lead was you had to separate the people and you had to treat them by ethnicity, color, or their passport. And it was very uncomfortable for me because I thought we're all equal. Under the sun, we're all equal. But they had different ideas. And so for me, being in that environment, it just didn't suit me, that leadership. So I didn't want to be engaged and I wanted to leave. And eventually I did. But when I started to work for Emirates Airline, the story was totally different. So same region, very different experiences.
Absolutely. And Australian culture is very egalitarian, right? We think everyone's a mate. You never use the word boss. You never see them as a boss. Everyone's a friend and everyone's a
Mm,
mate. And doesn't matter. We all doing different jobs, but we are doing different jobs, being part of the same society, and equal. Every job is equally important. Um,
mm,
but there is this vast study that's been conducted across all different cultures that we can see why some cultures are so independent, why some cultures are so hierarchy based, and yes, Middle Eastern culture and even British culture to some degree sits in there. We
mm,
think, uh, you know, uh, jokingly people say that we are all wannabe Americans, but we are not. We enjoy independence, but we don't enjoy like tall poppy syndrome. It's
mm,
very Australian. We don't see that in American culture. In America, they like to lift you and make you almost hero like and worship you. You
mm,
can see their top sports stars, their basketball players or their Tom Brady's of the world. You will see them, but we don't celebrate our Aussie football players like that. We celebrate teams. We have loyalty towards team. Either you're Doggies fan or
mm,
you're Richmond Tigers. So I think that's there are nuances, and yes, you start to open up, and looking at you, you have a multicultural family. I'm sure that your kids will be far more educated and more equipped to deal with multicultural situations than you and I would have grown up. And I think that's the world that we're heading into. We're heading into a world that's less limited by the boundaries and geographies, and more less divided by and more collaborated by language and common humanity. And that's the beauty of the world that we are about to embark into.
Mm.
Yeah.
One thing I picked up along the way is that you can learn the language, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you understand the culture. So here in Taiwan, they understand what a kangaroo is. And so Aussies, we say kangaroo. But when you have a look at the symbology of the word kangaroo in the Chinese language, it means pouch rat,
Uh-huh.
a big rat with a pouch on the front.
Right. Okay.
And so when you think of it as a pouch rat, now you're going to have a totally different interaction with it. Because it's no
Yeah.
longer a kangaroo and it's no longer on our coin. It's this dirty thing that runs around with a pouch on the front.
That's that's funny because from Australian culture, like we have kangaroo on our emblem, not as a pest, but as a kangaroo can't go back. Like,
Mm,
they're one of the few animals, they can't retract back. They always
mm.
go forward. But the way you're putting it, yes, rat's not a greatest thing on your emblem, and somebody might wonder why
Yeah.
we are celebrating pouch rats on our emblem. Yeah, yeah,
It's such a different thing. And here, like you're mentioning, with a lot of our employers in Australia, we'll call them mate rather than boss. But you go to the Middle East and everybody's boss. I'm boss, you're boss, everybody's boss. And here in Taiwan, the boss is worshipped and the boss controls your rice bowl. And you never talk back to the boss. You never give lip or cheek to the boss because the boss might not put any rice in your bowl and you'll
mm,
starve. So the way that they interact with their leaders, we call them Lao Bun, which is like big boss.
yeah,
But
right,
in
yeah,
Australia, we'd never say big boss. It's just mate because we look at them as an eye to eye. We're peer to peer. But here, it's subordinate. And some of the culture here, when you look at how people are subordinate to the Lauban, the big boss, is a sign of good work is that you get to work before the boss. And a good sign of a good employee is you don't leave until after the Laoban's gone home. So they judge performance on the amount of time you've been in the environment, not necessarily the output. Where in Australia, if you get to work early, somebody will say, you've got a life to live. Don't come here so early. And
yeah.
if it gets past 5 o'clock, they start to ask questions. If you haven't finished your work at 5 o'clock, you must have been messing around during the day.
Oh, yeah.
So that culture is totally different. You're expected to perform from 9 till 5 whilst we're paying you. But here it's about being seen. I was the first in, I was the last to leave. That means I'm committed. That means I'm good at my job. But it doesn't equate to performance.
To your point, I think nothing's wrong. Um, we got to appreciate different cultures have had their own trajectory and their own moments in time to develop and get to where they are. There are so many nuances in the background, how we see the elders in society, how we see work, our connection with work, all those things accumulate together to form culture. And I've learned a long time ago that culture is many things, but when we look at culture, it's like a glacier. We can see the tip artifacts on the top, but then
Mm.
that massive mass that sits under water that we can't see, that's what defines the whole iceberg. It's not just the tip. And I think from that perspective, um, the stories that have created the long lineage of history that's associated with every culture defines culture. To me, I have this funny story of telling how I think and how I believe leadership started. Leadership never started with titles. It wasn't that when we were living in small little tribes in Savannah, we suddenly decided we will have nations and countries. The whole concept of nations is relatively very new. It comes from Napoleonic era. Before that, we had mostly seen each other as group of same clans, same tribes, same bigger, ethnicities. Call them. Again, ethnicity is relatively new to that concept as well. uh, but how believe leadership started when we were in Savannah, group of 100, and every time there was either floods, drowning us, or there was, severe drought the very next season, or there were lions hunting us in small packs. We decided how we're going to survive. So we looked around and we said, I don't trust this person because last time I gave them opportunity, they did not shine the way they should have responded. I looked at my right. No, me neither. I looked at you, Daniel, and I said, Daniel, I remember you were kind to my kids or you were kind to me. So you gave me some reason to believe in you, whether that was said reason or whether that was felt reason. Some other persons felt the same way, third person felt the same way. And you were the one person that genuinely showed the traits of what we classify as a leader: empathy, vulnerability, caring, all that kind of stuff. So we gave you our extra collected stuff for that season and we burdened you with it. And we said, we trust in you that when need comes, when there is next drought and nobody had food, you will equally share and distribute uh, reasonably to, and you be kind to everyone. We did it once, we did it twice. We started doing this more and more with every decision there was to be made as little small pack in Savannah. It happened one generation, second generation, we found another one like you, and we started finding these so-called leaders, and then we started glorifying them with horns and crowns and names, chiefs and whatnot we call them. And this kept on happening. Other tribes started looking at us and they started looking at us. They started, oh, these guys are well fed always. They are always surviving. What are they doing different to us that we are not doing? Oh, they have this one person, this one system of choosing leader. And that's making the whole difference because they could see. So some other tribes emulated the same way as we chose you and we started this process of leadership. Others simply looked at it how I can emulate because all they saw was a pile of a stack of breads sitting in front of you. And this person said, I don't need to show, demonstrate trust and empathy and all that. I can, as long as I can collect all that bread, people will listen to me because that's an easy way of doing it. So from that point, at some stage, whether that was 40 generations later or whether that was 400 years later, leadership became trait of who can collect more because that was an easiest way. That was easy path.
Mm.
And fast forward 100, 200 years later, we almost forgot. It became a race of collecting stones, gems, whatever was precious at the time. Today, it has become the race to collect more titles, KPIs, shares, houses, whatsoever it means. And and that's where we see, yes, there is a common point when we take it back to the fundamentals of everything that we are connected as one species, and where did it all start? But culture defines how things have become different.
Mm.
But fundamentals are essentially the same, I would say.
Mm. It's so true, isn't it? How we evaluate people. Size of the bank account,
Yes.
but forget about the size of the heart. Number of
Yes.
houses, but forget about how many people they've supported. I think I heard it once really, really well. It's like a vanity metric. How many likes you can get on your social media post determines if you're a leader, because that determines all your followers. But there's so many other qualities and characteristics. They're all extrinsic things. But the intrinsic things is when men and women choose leaders, they look for very different things. For women, it's very easy for them to choose the emotional intelligence characteristics. Is this person, do they have the ability to communicate? Do they have the ability to build a team? Are they emotionally aware? Is their vision more inclusive or is it more exclusive? And I believe that women are very good judges of the emotional competence, but men like to measure things. Well, my penis is bigger than yours. My house is bigger than yours. My car's bigger than yours. And bigger must be better.
Absolutely, I know. Uh, I love the avenue that you have opened into this conversation. Look, I'm no expert in terms of at what stage and how we started suppressing feminine or female half of our society, but I do believe uh, that leadership, as we see, especially in last 2 decades, as we are unraveling and uh, and looking at the basic fabric of leadership, we can see most of these traits come from feminine culture. or feminine half of the society: empathy, kindness, vulnerability, the basic traits that help you and me to just grow up from little babies to adults that we can look after us. They are essentially the same traits. The same traits our parents show us. We never see um, a family or somebody who has grown up to be a good adult and be more productive member of the society, where they have constantly been harmed or constantly been pushed into the harder traits rather than, like I said, the empathy, the softness. Often people say, I ask this question: what's the first time when you experienced leadership, whether it was you taking leadership or whether you were giving leadership? Most people will start reflecting back and they'll say, oh, when the very first time I had my leadership 101 in my bachelor's or my MBA class, or when I gained this title, I had my first person who reported to me and I became the junior manager. Anthropologically, or when we look at the basic evidence of leadership, leadership starts when the very first time when we are born babies and when we get in the hands of our caregivers. Because at the very first relationship that we form as we enter into this new world and we feel nurtured or cared. Now that can essentially, and that's why there's so many studies now conducted that we have so much impact what we grow up to be, how we grow up to be, based on the very initial relationship that we have, spending time with a mom or a dad as newborn baby. How many times we hugged and cuddled? And honestly, if you see that, somehow our culture has molded the definition of leadership that by the time we turn 18 or 19, we almost unwind our leadership understanding and we twist it. We then get to the point where we see, okay, leadership must be, like you said, the game of got the bigger car or who's got the bigger penis.
Mm.
Uh,
Well,
That
the
we
Greeks did it, didn't they? They built statues to the biggest and the smallest penises.
Absolutely, yes. So, so it's bizarre at the same time. I think time. I generally believe time has come for humanity to start looking at the fundamentals, especially as we are about to enter into the age where we are almost competing with a new evolutionary force as AI is, and we can talk about it if you like. Time has come for us to essentially tap into the basic fundamentals and get it right,
Mhm.
because so far we have had made choices as collective humanity. We have made wrong choices, but largely we have made right choices, and we have gotten up to this point. 100,000, years of lineage, and we have almost captured every habitable corner of the planet. And now we're thinking about going to Mars and whatnot. It's not those traits of measuring stuff that has gotten us this far. They are the same traits: the empathy, the vulnerability, the care,
Mhm.
the actual trust that has gotten us to this point. And that's the mission I'm on.
You were mentioning about the first leadership is when we're born. If we think back to Ayurvedic medicine, the subcontinent of India, and we consider the energy systems, the chakras, the first energy system is the root chakra. And the root chakra is about feeling grounded and stable in this world. And that root chakra is developed in the first 7 years of our life. So, whilst we're in our mother's womb, our root chakra starts to become energized. And if we feel loved and supported and safe and stable in our mother's womb, and the mother's womb is a safe environment, as we grow up, we feel safe and stable in the world. We don't feel that the world's a scary place. And then those early childhood experiences, if our father's around in the first 7 years of our life, we feel safe and protected. But if our father's out and about and he's not home, then we feel vulnerable. And throughout our life, we keep feeling vulnerable. And this can be an underlying problem for a lot of people at an energetic level, that because they didn't get that leadership from mother or a fatherly figure in the first 7 years of their life, they feel unstable and insecure for the rest of their life. So when they do step into leadership from an energetic perspective, they're not grounded, they're not rooted. They're very easy to push around and push over. But it comes back to that first 7 years of life. The first 7 years of life for a child, the child needs unconditional flows of love,
Yes.
unbroken flow of love from the parents. And that doesn't make a pussy. It doesn't make a sissy. It doesn't make a weak man. The men that we look at today who are stable in this world have received that unconditional flow of love from the parents. They're strong, they're masculine, they're fair, they're feminine, they've got a high intellect, they've got a high EQ because those roots, those early years, those foundations were in place. And so, even from an energetic thing, if we look at it from a different perspective through the lens of Ayurvedic medicine and healing and the ancient arts coming out of the subcontinent 3,000 and 5,000 years ago, they knew it back then. Stability starts at a young age. Now, if we didn't get it at a young age, that's okay. We can find a leader who can develop that in us at an older age. But it's not something you're going to learn from a book. It's going to be something that we learn from experience and interaction.
Without endorsing those words, I do believe that there is a solid element of how you're raised, um, and in different cultures, you can see there is a commonality that humanity has used different, call them analogies, call them different theories, but they're connected. Um,
Mm,
and you will find the relevancy because uh, in a lot of ways, all this interaction that we are having, right? All this interaction that we have when we are at work, call it as a work leadership, call it as me going to a football club and looking at my coach or my captain. They're all human relationships. They're innately human. They're embedded in our DNA. They're embedded in our culture, our genetic understanding of how we work as community. Humans were not the mightiest of the mightiest species on the planet.
mm,
um, we are neither the strongest nor the smartest. Uh, the one thing that has fundamentally helped us work as species that has essentially conquered the whole planet and has become the top, uh, call them top of the pecking order, has been our ability to work as community and groups together. And there are
mm,
so many elements to it. Our ability to speak and form sentences and share our thoughts, our ability to work together, our ability to have consciousness to not just think about today but think about tomorrow. uh, all this stuff that we have been able to work as collective community has what shaped the humanity and what we have gotten so far. And I'm pretty sure that when we go and pan across different cultures and different theories, we will find relevant elements of similar things. Like you mentioned,
mm,
this first 7 years is essentially the trust, the next few years of showing vulnerability, care that you receive as a follower from your leader. That could be your mom or dad or whoever is providing you that care. And essentially, until 1980s, even in leadership theories, we thought we have discovered everything. We had discovered charisma, we discovered how you rally up the troops and all that, and we discovered most leadership scholars at the time thought they have discovered everything. And then comes early 2000s. Suddenly, the likes of Brené Brown started talking about vulnerability. The likes of Simon Sinek started talking about your purpose and why. Viktor Frankl had spoken about it back in 50s and 60s. Um, so we always humans, as humans, we have always thought that we have discovered everything.
mm.
We have always thought that this modern generation of ours is the most advanced and there is nothing else to unravel. The beauty of learning more is to basically uncover and discover there is so much that we don't know yet. And I'm pretty sure that even in leadership arena, in the whole understanding of human brain and human relationships together, we'll discover and we'll uncover so many beautiful things yet to come. And most of these things will be quite parallel to what we're discovering today. The software elements, the trust, the empathy, the things that we learn from our moms, our dads as
Mm.
parents, not as them, with a whip on our back and asking us to do more, get more, learn more just because you have to get somewhere.
And off the back of that, I think a lot of people feel in the Western world is that you're only worthy when you're working. And it's a terrible thing because it drives that type A personality. where you stay at work longer, you work longer hours, you give up more of your life, you give up more of your spirituality, you give away your mental health, you give away your emotional health, you give away your physical health just to be at work. But those competencies also lead to burnout. If you don't have emotional balance, if you don't have physical balance, if you don't have mental health balance, if you don't have spiritual balance, it all comes crashing down. And I know that this is an area of your specialization, and I want to hear it from you. What creates burnout? What kills the innovation?
Well, let's look across cultures, Daniel. You mentioned in our cultures, we have had this system that people will recognize themselves by what they do for work. There is solid evidence, right? We look at surnames and we can see Smiths and Snyders of the world. And they essentially gained their surnames based on what their families used to do. Even in Hindu culture, where they had the four categories of what you do for the society. So essentially, when we were highly functional societies, we divided people to do certain elements or certain duties for society, and that gave us purpose. But as we grew, we started looking around and we started finding that things that my ancestors might have enjoyed, I might not have same purpose. I might want to do
Mm,
something different. And that's where we are essentially today. But yet,
mm,
as collective human society, still we are very, like you mentioned, to your point, that we still identify us through our work. If you ask somebody today, what do you do, or tell me who you are, mostly they will say, I'm a doctor, I'm an engineer. They won't say, I'm a person who believes that everyone has fundamental right to good health, and I do it by the means of my profession, by being a doctor or by being a nurse. Right? We don't see that generally as a culture just yet. But what is evident now is uh, there was this interesting study done by forgetting his name, Dan Buchanan. I'm mispronouncing his surname, but he came up with these theories of finding why there are more centurions in certain part of the society, in certain part of the world, um, and he essentially started calling them blue zones.
mm,
Now, these blue zones are pockets, 7 pockets in the world that have that are producing more per capita centurions than the whole planet, even compared to the neighboring little towns or cities or regions. What are they? They started looking at and they started finding, okay, in some areas, maybe it's because the altitude is different. So air and the quality of air and the quality of environment you get in vegetation and life you get is different. So maybe that might be the thing. But then they looked at the other ones and they say, wait a minute, they are right next to ocean. So altitude won't be a thing. Okay. Then they started looking at their diet. Okay, maybe you eat more vegetarian stuff. While there is a solid evidence of processed food and non-processed food, again, different region had different things. So when they come up and summed up that, what 5 or 6 things might be possible linking this region to produce more centurions, were a little different to the other region and were far different to the next region. But one thing that was common was the concept of purpose.
mm,
All 7 regions has had this inclination to be connected with something that they call as their purpose for life, whether that's you being the next Mozart and your purpose for life is to leave the world with the best melodic um, experiences that world will ever experience, or whether it's simple belief that you are here to do something good for the society and you do it by XYZ. That concept of purpose, and in one of these places in Japan, they called it ikigai. So ikigai is that one concept that essentially gives more meaning to life, and that's essentially embedded in our DNA. And then we look back at the works done by the likes of I mentioned Viktor Frankl, uh, who survived concentration camps, and he
man's
comes out
search for meaning.
in the man's search for meaning. I think, and when we look into our individual work, that is where the hidden, the most important core and crux lies. That burnout happens when we are pursuing work without purpose. When I don't
Mm,
see that what I'm building Essentially, I'm building just a wall versus the monument that we're working towards. When most leaders struggle to connect each individual staff member's employees' work with something larger, something more meaningful than what they are doing in the small uh, scale, they will always experience burnout. It's just about to happen. And once you find burnout, then yes, people talk about, oh, there's work-life balance and all that stuff. No, based on my experience, when people are connected to purpose, when they can see what they're doing and how it benefits others, they find more meaning in their work. Burnout doesn't happen. Um, that's the first reason. And yes, few other things play into this, but essentially that's the core and crux of how we can remove burnout from modern work culture.
Mm. I think we've all had that experience as well, where if we've grown up in a family and there's a family business, there's almost a silent expectation that you've got to work in here.
Mhm.
Or the worst part is the guilt of the parents when they say, we're building this for you.
Yeah.
It started out as the mother or the father's passion or their dream or their purpose, and now they're trying to hand it on to the kids for their legacy. But it doesn't mean that that's what they want in their life. And I think in this new generation, having that meaning and purpose is more important than the older generations. A lot of Aussies, the dream used to be the great Aussie dream was having your house and a backyard. That was it.
Yep.
So whatever you
Suburban
did
dream.
to
Yeah.
get that, that was the purpose. But that has shifted. And with the work of Simon Sinek, people are asking, why am I doing this? Why do we do it that way? What's in it for me? And if there's nothing in it for the individual, then they're going to burn out. I used to be in real estate, and my uncle said to me, he said, Daniel, people get into real estate because they're depressed, and they get out because they're depressed. And a lot of people think they're going to get into real estate and make a lot of money, and that's going to solve their life's problems. But it doesn't. It's not the money that solves the problem. You've got to be dedicated to something beyond that.
Uh,
And if the job gives you an opportunity to fulfill other passions, then you're probably going to avoid burnout. Uh, I worked with Emirates Airline, and I really enjoyed the job, and I got to a position where I was a senior flight steward. And so that means I was co-leading a team of 17,500 cabin crew. I'd go onto a flight and I had 17 crew to lead and 400 customers to take care of. And for me, that was really important because I like to be around people. So I got to be with people every day. And I also liked hospitality. It was a wonderful job. But there was also another part of me that was developing in that time of my life. From age 28 and 29, I started to discover spirituality.
mhm.
And one of the talents that I had acquired because I was traveling the world was I started to learn how to read tarot cards. Now, when I grew up, if I would have mentioned tarot cards in my house, that would have been a tool of the devil. And how dare you get that? And we better call the priest and we better get an exorcism here. But for me, it was something that was spiritual. It was exploring a part of myself that I'd never known about before. So as I got skilled at reading the cards, I would take them onto the aircraft and I'd do readings for my fellow cabin crew. And all of a sudden, people knew that I was the leader who could read cards. So my crew would swap their flights and they'd say, Daniel, I heard that you can read people's tarot cards. And my friend told me that if I flew with you, you'd do a reading for me on the layover or whilst we're flying. And I'd say, who's that person's name? And they'd tell me the name. I'd say, okay, I flew with that person last week. And these people were willing to give away a New York flight and fly with me from Dubai to Trivandrum at 2 a.m. in the morning because they knew they could get a tarot reading. But what was in it for me was I had a lovely job, I had a lovely lifestyle, I was getting great money, and then I got to do something else I loved with a whole group of different people. And so I would fly after the service, I would do my tarot readings on the layovers, I'd do the tarot readings, and I was very happy because the job gave me an opportunity to do everything that was important to me at that stage in my life.
That's beautiful, Daniel, how you explained, and let me unpack it a bit. You mentioned a few things there. You mentioned tarot card. You mentioned your love for for your fellow team members, and essentially they started working with you, and they were almost wanting to travel with you even at the expense of bearing some pain. um,
Mm.
um, and then there is concept of spirituality and all that. um, when we look at purpose, it's a very ingrained human DNA based need that we have. That's the one reason that why we have essentially traveled continent after continent. And yes, there is element of human being a curious species, but also we have been in search of purpose. what is
Mm.
what is this whole story that we are carving? That's the human story that we are part of. We are merely tiny chapters of it. I mean chapters of it. There is a interesting way of looking at it. Somebody explained it to me that if we put the whole documented if we put whole human history on a 24-hour clock, um, then essentially the documented history will fit in first 30 seconds. And by documented
Wow.
human history can go back to as far as Alexander the Great, the birth of Christ, and the BCs before that, Cleopatra, and to even Egyptian and pyramids and all that. That's a documented history that we know. We don't know what happened before that. We still can make up looking at fossils, but we really don't know. When
Mm.
we stop finding monuments or carbon aged monuments, what happened before that? We are merely 30 seconds on the 24-hour clock. That means your and my life won't even register a single second on this clock. And yet we think we are the center of the planet, or we center of this whole universe. From that perspective, this purpose is this one thing that connects us as human on that long chain of 200,000 years of human story that we are. We don't know where we're embarking. We don't know what's our purpose. So that's one way of looking at it, and that's very altruistic way of looking at it. But then coming to just basic individual beings as biological creatures we are, let's not think about you know something larger than life. Purpose could be as simple as giving somebody hope that you were providing. I might not believe in tarot cards, or I might believe in tarot cards, or I might start believing in tarot cards because you have given me some hope that something good is coming, or you have given me something that I can work on to be. Essentially why I'm coming to you is to have a better tomorrow, or how can I
Mm.
make my tomorrow better, or
Mm.
people around me, and that hope. So religion does provide us. There are solid elements of that. Religion had function to play in human society, even still does. um, and those could be the element of giving us purpose. Some people found purpose through religion. Some people found
Mm.
way of doing things right through religion. Sometimes some religions give the whole concept of, when back then there were no policing system and judicial system, then we will find we'll have to pay for our sins after life, so I might do better things today. Religion has so many different elements of what it plays and a role it plays in human society and in an individual human. But definitely there are traits of religion and spirituality providing the whole concept of purpose and a need or connection with purpose. And that's why we are finding too that in modern society, as we're going away from religion, and that's common for me, from looking from a pure scholarly perspective, or philosopher's perspective. Yes, religion has had its time, and yes, there are societies today where we are losing the connection with religion. I'm spiritual,
Mm.
I'm not overly religious, and to me that's fine. But more importantly, when we look at the concept of how society will continue to function as we will become a collective and more global society of 7 billion of a tribe together, where we were essentially working as a tribe of 100 people, several hundred thousand years ago, to today work as a tribe of 7 billion global population today. We essentially need to start questioning that how we can work and start connect this whole element of purpose through our work. Or, like you mentioned, your work was different, but you were doing something at your work that was a little different to what your written job duties were, yet you
Mm.
found your purpose there.
Mm.
And purpose doesn't need to be grandiose. What I do feel that there are traits when purpose can be pseudo purpose, but it can dress, walk, and talk like purpose. That's what we need to keep ourselves away from. Me just trying to get my kids to Disneyland because that's what they want, and that's why I'm making those decisions today. might give a ring like a purpose. It might sound like a purpose, but it actually isn't. That's the very
Mm.
simplistic way of me explaining. But then there are other things that we can look at it, that how a purpose might dress and show up like purpose, but it's actually not. And we can unpack that further. But yes,
There's a lot
purpose.
of that. There's a lot of that fake purpose. Uh, the way that I hear it show up in the real estate industry is it's the most stupid thing. And it smells like bullshit when they see it. People say, oh, I got into real estate because of the industry. Nobody gets into an industry because of an industry.
Yeah.
They say, I got into real estate because of the people. And then you watch their behaviors. You're like, nobody would ever speak about their customers, their buyers, their sellers like that if they were interested in people. It's got to go beyond that. Yes, some people are genuinely interested in people. And when they say it, it's congruent. But a lot of people say it and they're not congruent. What they're really saying is that I'm in here to make a lot of money and I don't care about the people.
Yep.
Well, I'd rather at least you just said that. If you told me that you were here for the paycheck and you've got $1 million income goal and you're going to work hard and you're going to get me the top dollar for my house, you care about me getting money and you care about getting a high commission, cool. Thank you so much for being honest. I respect that.
Yep.
But don't try to fool me on the outside by saying people and passion and purpose and mission and vision when it's not that. Just be real. It's like I think Australians are a little bit different to Americans, like you're saying before, with the tall poppy syndrome. I think what Australians have that a lot of other cultures don't have is a very good bullshit meter.
Oh, yeah.
Like we smell it. We smell it from a mile away. Like, it's fucking bullshit.
Yep.
Stop bullshitting me. And people are like, oh, okay, rightio. And you get down to brass tacks, where Americans don't tend to call it out like Aussies do.
Yep. But I
Spade's a
100% agree with with your statement there. Um, I get these inquiries where people will come and talk to me, and probably I'm about to go a little controversial here, and you know this because you have worked in real estate. People will come and say, "Oh, my goal is to provide other people financial security, and that's why I'm setting up this realtor or development business." And I'll ask them, "How many properties have you got?" And somebody will say, 35 properties. This happened in real. So how many houses have you got? 35. What's your equity? What are you sitting at? My portfolio is worth $20 million right now, and my equity is 12 million. Okay, and so what's your goal for next year? I want to grow more. What do you mean by grow? Tell me more. My goal is to increase my portfolio, increase my equity. I want to go in this region, this region, this region. So that's what why you want my help for, and they will say yes. So state that. What's your purpose? My purpose is to provide people financial security. How? How are you listening to yourself? Like you said, my bullshit detector will go off. You're bullshitting me. Like right now, you are here, so you can in the next. What took you 6 months or 1 year to increase your portfolio by from 30 to 35. You want to make it faster. That's what you're here for. You're not here amidst the biggest housing crisis we have in Australia. If somebody comes and says that the only way I can help this crisis is by acquiring more properties, my response would be, no, you're lying. I know that part. My bullshit detector is going off. We know that part. Like during COVID, when we had egg shortage or we had toilet paper shortage, what did government do? Government said we are limiting 2 egg trays per person. That's the only way supply and demand problem to solve it. Yet we try to solve Australian housing crisis, but by saying that we will bring in more money, more investor money, so they can buy more and hold more properties that will solve financial crisis. That's just against the basic 101 rules of econs. Um, so it's not going to work. And yes, you're right. Like this purpose could smell like purpose, but your people can see it. When you as a leader, when you show up and you say your purpose and you do something else, people will see right through you. You won't be able to establish the element of trust, authenticity with your people, and people will never show up for you. This happened um, with Nestle. They make chocolate bars, but they tried to show up the shareholder market by showing up. I can't remember the exact purpose statement they came up with, but they came up with purpose statement. We are providing the best food or most
Mm,
healthy option of food to the planet. People look right through you. You sell lollies and chocolates. Just say that you want to sell something that give people enjoyment. Don't just charade this purpose to come as altruistic and value driven organization when you're not. Because when you do that, it'll do more damage to you, and that happens in individual lives, that happens as companies we run, and that happens when you show up at home. How can you expect your kids to be better human beings when in front of them you're treating to your staff member and treating them really bad? They're going to see that, as dad, you say one thing to me, but you do something else when you are sitting with your team members, or growing up as dad. How you behave with your wife is the best way of teaching them good values
mm,
than telling them how they should be behaving, and dealing with women.
mm. What you're saying here, an example in a split family is there could be mum and dad, they've got together, they liked each other at the start. Along the way, they lost respect for one another, but now they've got kids.
Mhm.
And then they stay together. And then they say to the children, we stayed together because of you. And the child saying, bullshit. You didn't stay together because of me. You stayed together because you didn't have the balls to leave.
Absolutely.
You didn't have the skill set to go out and make money for yourself.
Yep.
But now you blame me and you want me to hold the guilt for your lack of courage.
Yes.
That's not fair. We got to say it how it is. And people look through it. But how it makes the individual feel on the inside is you feel like an imposter. And those people who say, I want to create 100 jobs, but what they're really saying is that I want to make $100 million. Everybody sees it, but internally they're like, I hope somebody doesn't find out that I'm all about the money.
Yes.
So they create this body armor, they create this facade, they start to distance themselves from people, but everybody else can sense it. Just say it. If your goal is to make $100 million and you want to employ 100 people to come and help you on that journey to achieve it, 100 people say, that's awesome, because if you want to make 100 million and I can make some at the same time, excellent. At least we know what the end goal is. It was like
Absolutely.
Moses going to the promised land. Okay, we've got to leave Egypt. I've got to part the Red Sea. These are all our problems. And the other side, this is the promised land. If you tell people that this is the promised land and where we're going, and there's 7 billion people on the planet, you're going to find 100 more people who are like you and say, you know what? I don't like people either. And I just want to work on numbers and spreadsheets and I want to buy and sell and trade and I don't want human contact. I'm not all that confident. I don't like to have a conversation. I don't like to be surrounded and listening to everybody else. There's another 100 people out there. And there's nothing wrong with that. Let the other people deal with the people. It's like in when I profile people, there's a science that I use and it's called the science of DISC.
Hmm.
And in DISC, we have a look at how we approach problems, how we approach people, how we approach the pace, and how we approach policy. And there's some people there who can be described as high dominant. They're aggressive. They don't care how terrible the journey is. They just care about the result. They don't care if they've got to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go to bed at 11 o'clock at night. They don't care if they see their family or not. They don't care what the uniform looks like or not. They just have a result, and the end justifies the means. And that's great for them. Where there's people on the other end of the scale who are non confrontational, they're more agreeable, they're more yielding, they're more of a team player. They put a lot more thought into the journey because they have more fear. Now, they want a result, but the way they're going to get it is very different.
Hmm.
And neither's right or wrong. And being high D or low D doesn't guarantee success. It's just your approach. And then we have the human factors. We have the high I people. High I people are described as influential, trusting, charming, charismatic. Now, that doesn't guarantee success. I know a lot of actors who live on the streets, and we see it in Hollywood all the time. They got all the charisma, but it doesn't guarantee success. On the opposite end of the scale, you've got people who are more logical, more skeptical. These are our accountants. They smell the bullshit. They don't believe in your goals. They don't care about your goals or your purpose. They just want to look at the numbers. Show me the ones, show me the zeros. When you go to the bank, The bank doesn't lend you money because of your vision and your mission purpose. They lend you money based on the reality.
Yep.
They say, we know people lie. We know people blow things up. Show me the numbers. And so people who are high in I style, they really like being around people. People who are low in the I style don't like to be around humans. And if that's you, be true to yourself because a lot of these disc factors are developed in utero. 60% of these characteristics are bred into us, either from God or from our parents. And then we develop these little things over time. But if we're just true to ourselves, we're more congruent. And if we say, I want to own 30 houses or 40 houses and I don't want to have to go to work and be surrounded by 30 people every day, do that. Do life on your terms. That's a lot better.
Absolutely. Um, Leadership is a very learned skill, and more we make decisions, yes, we have biases towards one trait or another, and there are so many. And yes, I have heard about this. I've seen Myers Briggs and Strength Finder and all of those research based tests, and they are true to some degree. Yes. Um, and through my research, when I look at leadership and try to understand this beast of a topic, which is, and I stand on the shoulders of giants. There have been so many beautiful and incredible researchers and scholars who have come before me, who have explained so many different traits of leadership. Leadership is 100 million things, but when I look back at leaders who were successful to humanity and in real sense to where we are today, when we connect the key milestones of humanity and we say, yes, that happened and that's how we came here. This happened and that's why we landed 50 years later here. When we look at those pivotal moments of leadership, you will find there were leaders who were not charismatic, yet very successful. In not traditional sense of KPIs and all that, but in those pivotal, key, life-altering, uh, path-changing decisions that humanity got us to where we are today. We will see that there are some leaders who had few things, but then they were missing or lacking other things. But then there were other leaders who had more of something else. But what was common among these three leaders is what I call the whole concept of nautical leadership model, that three things that ultimately dictate that whether you'll be successful as a leader, not in the typical KPI, let's look at how much you accumulated and in that sense, but in the sense that will define humanity, what it will become in 50, 100 years time. Those things, there are three basic elements. Number one, I call beacon. That's your purpose anchored in values. They have to be together, purpose anchored in values, and I can break it down a bit further. The second is your ability to be adaptable and to be agile, your ability to see things as they're changing, what's on the horizon, what you think will become a norm in 10 years time, when we are ready to experience that change, when socially it's acceptable, and when we are ready to just give that gentle push that we will break the orbit and get to the next orbit. That's the second ability of being a wayfinder, being adaptable, be agile. The third of these abilities is seafarer, being courageous and be decisive enough to make the decision, take the helm when you got to, but then step back. Leaders are not who constantly keep the control, who take the helm all the time. They're the ones who know when to step in and when to step back, but they know what's a crucial moment when they actually have to take the helm and make the decision. Um, so, from this collective uh, point, what I call nautical leadership model, you can have everything and anything else. But if you are missing these three basic traits, your beacon, your wayfinder, and your seafarer abilities, your leadership is not going to be successful for humanity. People will see you, history will see you, not with kindness. Um, and that's the crux of what I think leadership has become and leadership should be.
Coming from aviation, there's similar principles to sailing. And when I would look at the captain on the aircraft, he was skilled at flying the aircraft, at navigating the aircraft. He didn't refuel the aircraft. He didn't pump up the tires. He didn't wash it. He didn't serve chicken and beef down the back. He didn't close the doors. He delegated all those responsibility and he had oversight of it all. And the captain had final say. So he would empower his crew and say, "You've been trained. These are your key competencies. If there's a problem, come and talk to me. If there's no problem, you don't have to disturb me." And if there was something that the crew couldn't solve, then the captain very rarely would ever step in to deal with something far below his pay grade. If he, we used to have customers come and knock on the door of the cockpit and they'd bang on it, bang, bang, bang. And I'd say to the customer, "What are you doing?" They're like, "I want to talk to the captain." I said, "What do you want to talk to the captain about?" "Well, this road is rough. I'm not happy. It's bumpy." And I said, "Sir, we're 40,000 feet in the air. We're not on a road. It's the air." And I'm sure he doesn't want to talk to you about that. He's got more important things to worry about. But, the captain, and the captain always starts with the end in mind. Where are we going? I also learned the hard way. The One of the captains, I was on a 777-300 ULR aircraft. We're leaving Dubai for San Francisco. Beautiful big aircraft. And the captain said to me, "Daniel, would you like to sit in the cockpit for takeoff?" Now, out of the 7 billion people on the planet, not many people ever get to do that.
I haven't.
So I
Yeah.
said, absolutely. And I came and sat up there, and we went down the runway. He followed his procedures. We took off, and we're starting to fly out past the Burj Khalifa, the Burj Al Arab, and the Palm Island in Dubai. It's all out the left window. And as we started to fly, he said to me, Daniel, if we're flying from Dubai to San Francisco, and if our aircraft is just off course by 1 degree every hour, what do you think's going to happen?" And I thought to myself, 1 degree? If the temperature went up or down 1 degree, would I notice it? If there was a dollar more or a dollar less in my bank account, would I notice it? If I grew a centimeter or shrunk a centimeter, would I notice it? Probably not. So I looked at him. I said, "A degree? Probably nothing." And the look on his face, he spun around in the cockpit and he said, "You're wrong." And he said, "If we're 1 degree off course every hour over the next 6 hours, one of three things is going to happen to us. First thing, we're going to fly into Russian airspace. We're going to get shot down and we'll all die." And so I sat back in my seat. And he said, "Secondly, if we fly 1 degree off course, we might land 600 miles away from the aircraft. And that's going to be in the Pacific Ocean. We're going to crash into the water and we're all going to die." I said, "What's the third option?" He said, "Well, the third option is we fly too fast, we use too much fuel, and we crash because we can't make it to the airport."
Wow.
And I said, "Let me guess, we all die." And he said, "You're smarter than you look." And that was 1 degree in navigation. 1 degree off course. And then I started to think to myself, what if my life was just 1 degree off track every day? Would I notice it? Probably not. But what if for 365 days this year, I was just 1 degree off course every day? Oh my gosh, I would go around in a full circle and I'd come back to the exact place that I started from. And that's not where I want to be.
That's very profound, Daniel. I'm sure there are so many subjects and so many scholars who have worked on this. The whole concept of 1% better every day can get you, I don't know what's the compounding factor.
37x.
Yeah, like how better. And I'm pretty sure, like, even in leadership, um, we often get lost in the hypotheticals. We get lost in the spreadsheets. We get lost in what's my annual revenue target, or what's my quarterly target, and we think that's where leadership happens. Quite often, when we look at the successful leaders, we won't see them as how many times they have made passengers land safely to their destination versus who has got $300 billion of shares, and we look at them and we say they are better leaders, they're successful leaders. And that's where the definition of leadership is going wrong, because that's how we have started valuing, balancing, and celebrating leaders means that's the kind of breeds of leaders we are producing. And then we say the results should be different. Look at 1965, when the difference between the average salary of an employee versus average CEO was 1 to 20. And fair warning, disclaimer, this is generally about on a large scale, and we know that 90% companies are small and medium enterprises, and only 10% companies are the ones holding 90% of the value and the worth of the world. Most small and medium enterprises, this difference is not that bad. Like, it's not that a CEO is earning, you know, what the ratio that I'm about to tell. But in 1965, this ratio was 1 is to 20. Would you want to guess what's that ratio today?
217.
1 is to 420.
420.
Yes. So that means if I am earning, or you are earning $1,000 per month or per week, I'm earning $420,000 for the same company, for the same products, for the same service that we are offering, because we are in the same company.
Mm.
Now, by what stretch we think that since 1965, the top CEOs have started earning and adding 420 times more value than the average worker in the same very company? It's impossible. But to your point, we were discussing previously, this is where CEOs will come and say, we care about our employees, we care about our staff members. But when you ask them, could you please openly, publicly tell how much you are making? They'll say, no, that's private, that's confidential. Why that's confidential? Because I'm too ashamed to say it.
Mm.
Because next time when you come for your next salary pay performance review, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to instruct the same HR, that we can't afford to pay you extra $20 a day when I can get $2,000 every second or every hour added to my total remuneration. So that's where we see that, why fundamentals of leadership are going wrong, because leadership has essentially become a game to grab more. It has not been where we will, like you said, a captain on their flight will make sure that their decisions are to take and keep every soul safe on board. That's what Captain Sullenberger did. He wasn't thinking about what paycheck or bonus he's going to get after he lands his aircraft safely. His goal was to land the plane safely. Didn't have a checklist how to land a plane on the most densely populated planet on the city, or in at least in the US. How do things? You just go back to your basic instincts. You take the helm as a seafarer, because in this moment you have to make a decision, whether that's imperfect decision you do. And what's your beacon? You got to make sure that you keep everybody safe. Whether I'll get fired after this decision, and almost he did. There was a big inquiry that sat to decide whether his actions were right or wrong. Yet he came across and came out clear. And that's what
Got to
leadership is.
blame the human. Can't blame the machine.
Absolutely.
Don't let them lose faith in the machine. Lose faith in the people.
Yep.
It's a
Well,
cruel world.
we have done that. We have seen
Dave,
that Boeing has done. Yes, there's so much work that we can unpack on that.
so true. Dave, thank you for joining me today. And where can we learn more about your new book?
You can find me on whatever platform you follow. My website is as my name, davechohan.com. And yeah, I'll encourage your audience to connect with me on LinkedIn or whatever platform they are on.
Let's do it. Dave, thanks for joining me. Thank you so much.
Thank